So, as Matthew said at the beginning, today is harvest, an opportunity to give thanks for all the food that we receive and for the crops that have been safely gathered in, as we've seen around us. So do come down, because actually there's some bit of video to watch. Sorry. And also to pray for those who provide our food. And today we are giving thanks by making donations so that those locally and internationally will be able to eat food that many of us take for granted. So please do give. We're giving to the Chiltern Food Bank and to Christian Aid's Harvest of Hope campaign. And just so I say it now, while I remember, there are envelopes for you to gift aid money. If you put money into the collection, that will go. But also anything that gets put onto the contactless machine during this morning will go to our harvest collection. So, done that. Over the next 5 weeks, so today and through October, we're going to be theming our sermons based on a course called Growing Good. Growing Good is a toolkit that's been developed by the Church Urban Fund, and it's there to help churches to think about social action, the things that they can be doing within their communities, and how that helps those who are providing that social action with an opportunity to relate that to how God is working in their lives, and an opportunity to share their faith with those they come across. It's also an opportunity for the church to grow as people become more aware and more involved in activities that are outward looking rather than inward. As I said, it's a toolkit. It's actually set out as a course. We're not going to use it in that way, but instead draw on some of the conversations that are laid out. And perhaps in the next 5 weeks you might find that you'll be having a conversation with someone beside you, or taking away some of the thoughts and praying about what's happening in your life. So today I'm starting off with hospitality, looking at building up a culture of giving and receiving. Next week Matthew's looking at adaptability and thinking about being open to challenge and change. The following week is presence, where we're thinking about being seen and known for doing good. Participation, inviting people to be part of what's going on. And then perseverance, about being faithful in the long term. And it's also going to be an opportunity to look a little bit more at our new vision and taking the themes of Growing Good to help us to develop some of the ideas that have come in our Mission Action Plan and actually bring them to fruition. So, a question for you, and this is going to be a moment to think and then a moment to share with somebody beside you. The last time you received hospitality, what made you feel welcome or unwelcome? So I think the last time you received any sort of hospitality, what made you feel welcome or unwelcome? So, have a think just for a few moments yourself, and then I'll invite you to turn to the person beside you and just share a word or two of what you were thinking. Okay. Is there any particular word, or does anybody want to share anything that they were saying? I was overhearing Matthew talking about he's just been in Sweden. You could hear you saying about coffee and cake all the time. So the waistband come a bit tighter. Anybody want to share anything? Or we just smile, a smile that makes you feel welcome, indeed. And I always think that's a wonderful thing about Wendover, compared to when we lived in northwest London, and reminds me of living in the northeast when I grew up, is the smiles and the hellos that you get as you walk around the village. And it's people you wouldn't necessarily know. But yes, a smile makes a huge, huge difference. So the gospel reading is the passage that's been suggested in the hospitality session of Growing Good, and from Luke 14, 7 to 14. And we know, don't we, from the stories that we read and hear, that Jesus spent a lot of time receiving hospitality in other people's homes. And as we heard, he was invited to a meal at the house of one of the important religious leaders. And it was in those days that certain seats were considered more important than others at dinner parties. I suppose a bit like if you go to a posh dinner and there's a high table, or we've just been through the seating plan at a wedding reception and having the top table. Where do you put people? So it was that during the meal, Jesus tells his hosts and his fellow guests the parable that we just heard, a story to help them to understand what he was talking about. And this story is a great example of Jesus' ability to see into people's hearts. And if we're honest, it looks quite awkward. In it, Jesus is calling out both the guests and hosts for approaching hospitality with selfish motives. The guests with choosing the most important seat to try and get on, and the hosts for inviting the right guests who could pay them back another time. It was all about what was in it for them. And the way that we extend or receive hospitality, in fact, can say an awful lot about what's going on in our hearts. Are we sharing life with people, or subtly trying to show them that our lives are better than theirs? Are we genuinely loving people, or using them to boost our own self-esteem? How does it make you feel to hear those words from Jesus? Are you challenged by them and wonder why Jesus says we shouldn't invite people who can pay us back? There's a verse in Paul's letter to the Hebrews in chapter 13 that says, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it." I remember my mum saying that quote. Some of you will remember that a couple of months back, we kept having a visitor called Nathan, who was obviously struggling a lot. Didn't, or appeared not to have anywhere to live, and actually took up residence in our shed for a period of time and then moved on. Many were very kind to him and were able to help in a limited way. But perhaps we can recognise that the hospitality given to Nathan was somewhat limited. And I guess we need to question what was holding us back and why weren't we able to do more for him. Sometimes we recognise that the world's hospitality is conditional. What criteria do we use when we're inviting people? If we think about God's kingdom, hospitality is unconditional. It's not an invitation that we might have initiated, but it's actually a visitation that we didn't see coming, hence the suggestion of entertaining angels. It's this kind of hospitality that Jesus offered and teaches about, including in this gospel passage. That means we should welcome into our house and into our life the other, the one who is different from us, the one who is a stranger. For Jesus' hospitality extends beyond your friends, or as he listed in the gospel, your brothers or relatives or rich neighbours. It's about the crippled, the lame, the blind, the lepers, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, the poor and the powerless, the widows and orphans, the hungry and sick, the Gentiles and foreigners, those on the edge and those who are hanging on by a thread. No one was excluded and all were welcomed. And that is the hospitality that, yes, leaves us vulnerable and at risk. It's the hospitality that tells us to open the door even when we don't know who's there. Jesus isn't asking us to be reckless in our safety, and it's not this type of hospitality that begins with opening the door of our house. It's opening the door of our heart. Challenge us to face up to the things that we've closed and locked out strangers, and having a way to showing us ourselves and the doors that we've closed. Hospitality isn't so much about who the other is, and isn't about who I am and how I want to be. As I said at the beginning, I'm hoping that we can use these themes from Growing Good to help us to develop our vision. And there are the four areas of our vision. If you haven't seen a card that's got that on, then they are at the back of church. So the different areas of children, young people and families, our pastoral ministry, our engagement within our church community, and our engagement with our local community. One of the things that was suggested was that we should be starting some sort of social cafe. We know that there are a number of coffee shops in the village, and there are also some sessions at the Free Church that are open to members of the community. But how could we be using the space that we have to create another one at another time when people can come and share together? And what I'm going to play for you, I hope, is a short bit of video where this is a community, I think, up in Yorkshire. It's probably something very different than we can start. But there are the people who are talking about how they started this cafe and what it's actually meant for them. And that's what I'd like you to be able to hear.
And there were three of us who had this idea to form a cafe here where we could show God's love in action. And we were trying to think of a name. Bridges, because it will bridge all the community, every time, economically, socially, educationally.
Coming to Bridges, we trust that the people who come and who enjoy a coffee with us or a chat, that they have a sense of belonging. And also connecting, because a lot of the people who use us obviously come from the community, and so they connect with our volunteers and enjoy being here. And I just think that an act of kindness goes a long way.
It looks like a cafe superficially, but the purpose is to enable people to meet, and therefore we try and introduce people to each other, starting by introducing ourselves as and when time allows in between cooking and serving.
For me, Bridges, I would term it really as church in the community. People who might not go to a church, they can come here and they can see that the values that we operate by. So it's a channel, if you like, for God's love. It's about giving it away to others.
Now I usually come on a Friday afternoon to help with the place of welcome. I find that's really lovely because I can just listen to what people say. People tend to open up, either if they're eating or if they're doing some sort of handcraft with you, and that's what I really enjoy doing. Quite often we sit and chat for a while and we have cups of tea and cake. And sometimes we have Keep Fit, sometimes we do craft things, and sometimes we have a speaker. Being here makes me feel that I have a purpose and that I can use some of my skills and creativity, and at the same time, perhaps let people unburden things that are worrying them.
For me, Bridges is church in the community. We have a verse hanging on the wall here in Bridges, and it's Matthew 11, verse 28, where the Lord says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden." I would love to think that our churches are places where people are welcome, that they do belong, and because of that, they have a desire to participate in all the activities, if you like, of a church.
I think hospitality is really the business of making people feel at home, feel welcome, feel important and respected.
Just valuing each individual and being here for them, and being a bridge, if you like, between what is and what sort of that they would choose to be, so that we can walk with them and journey through life.
In the Gospels, Jesus spends a lot of his time eating and drinking in other people's homes. He also welcomes his people to share a meal with him around a table. Hospitality is at the heart of the Christian faith. The Growing Good research found that churches with a strong culture of hospitality are more likely to grow, both in numbers and in maturity. And hospitality goes further than just offering food. Eating together opens us up to deeper relationships. Community cafes, coffee mornings, or bring and share meals create opportunities for listening and conversation and friendship.
Hospitality is also an opportunity for people to see who you are and for you to see who they are. In the research, we learned from churches who share their faith as well as their food. Some churches offer prayer to individuals who come to the food bank. Others include a short, informal reflection about Jesus during a community meal, and hospitality on Sunday mornings, knowing that people who use and volunteer at the food bank are listening in. Growing churches do all this with authenticity and respect and generosity.
It's also important to let others host you, rather than assuming that we as the church should always be the host. Remember that Jesus spent much of his time as a guest in other people's homes, rather than always expecting people to come to him. Giving and receiving hospitality is part of following in the footsteps of Jesus.
Over to you. How can your church give and receive hospitality in a way that strengthens relationships?
I hope you found that helpful to listen to. And as we continue on, we need to be thinking about what hospitality does look like here at St Mary's and how we can develop it so we're both giving and receiving and sharing God's love. Now's not going to be the time to have the discussions about what we can be doing. And I recognise that what was the suggestions there are perhaps not what we can be doing. But one of the things that when we did the exercise around deciding which were the main things to do was putting red and green dots onto boards. And the thing that had the most green dots which was that I will get involved with, was actually around the social cafe. So look out for the call to those who gave green dots to gather together and let's see what we can be doing to create something, but also to be thinking as a church community how we do give and receive hospitality. Actually going to put a slide up. Natalie is doing a lot more on our social media, so Facebook and Instagram, and is producing this, so it hopefully tells me everything that I need to be sharing with you. And she put, it's going to be a busy October. So this week, today, between 2:30 and 4:30, it's our last afternoon teas. So come along. I imagine they'll be inside rather than outside, but come along to that. It's Sparklers tomorrow. Bell ringing always happens on a Tuesday. Then on Thursday is the 10 o'clock service when we have coffee. And then there's prayers between 4 and 5. Watch out, because that timing is changing. Is it from next week that it's changing, Tricia? Or is not this coming week, the following week. It's going to change to a Friday morning. But other things to highlight to you. Next Saturday, we're having a wedding fair. So again, Natalie, who you will know, her friend is a wedding planner, and she's arranged lots of different suppliers to come. And we're hoping that people will come, see how beautiful this church is, and encourage them to have a church wedding, even if it's not here, but elsewhere. So if anybody can make a cake, help to serve those during the day, or she's been able to get use of the school car park for parking, and I think could probably do with a couple of people to help to steward that. Help would be very much appreciated. Next Sunday afternoon, there's a church walk, and then the 25th, there's a barn dance, and tickets are on sale from the shop. Sian, what help do you need?
Just people to actually come and be there on the night would be brilliant. Thank you.
So we need people to be around on the night, but please, this is a chance to come together, to invite your friends to come to something in church. If you haven't been to a church barn dance before, they always are great fun. So that's happening on the 25th. And then the 3rd of November, Sunday the 3rd of November, is when we have our annual Thanksgiving and Memorial service. Invitations will go to all the families that we've had connections through funerals and burial of ashes. But of course, anybody can attend that service, can ask for names to be read to it. There are letters on the chest there. If you want to take one, fill it in then and get it back to Julie, then that is happening. And again, please invite friends, people in the village that you know who may have lost a loved one and would appreciate being able to come and have that time to remember. So, all the things that are coming up and much more.
Praise God, praise Him.